André Rieu's health has finally caught up with him at the age of 74, and he had to cancel multiple shows that fans in Mexico City were really looking forward to. Because of the sudden shift in his touring schedule, Rieu's son has stepped up to head the enormous company his father has spent decades creating. The idea that the man who boasted an incredible 80 properties and did 100 concerts a year could even contemplate retirement is hard to fathom, particularly considering that he had consistently assured everyone that he would continue performing until he was 140 years old. An emotional farewell to his admirers and his extraordinary career, his final performance in Maastricht reverberates with profound resonance. The little Dutch village of Maastricht was the birthplace of Rieu in 1949. He came from a musical but cold family. In contrast to the kind and supportive atmosphere one might anticipate from a family, his father's strict discipline as conductor of the Maastricht Symphony Orchestra took precedence. Rieu credits his hard childhood for shaping his dogged work ethic and passion for music, shaping him into the captivating entertainer he is now. Even if an era is coming to a close, his impact will live on in the hearts of many fans and musicians all around the globe. Coming in at number 3 out of 6, André's family life was more akin to a regimented military camp than a loving household. As a child, I didn't receive much love or support. His parents, devout Roman Catholics, insisted on regulations and silence above all else. People rarely laughed and friends weren't welcome. My parents didn't love me very much, André once boasted, and he meant it. His immature enthusiasm clashed with his emotionally detached parents from an early age. When his teachers referred to him as an artist, his mother took offense because she was so focused on his academic performance and musical training. André felt invisible unless he was performing at his absolute best as a result. He sought solace in therapy for a long time, seeking to understand the meaning of his desolate youth. Perhaps it was that emptiness, though, that drove him to alter the public's perception of classical music. Something out of the ordinary occurred when he was 5 years old. His violin teacher was the one he fell for. A stunning blonde, she was 18 years old. Because she was so distracting, he hardly paid attention in class. However, she motivated him to exercise daily. Scales were irrelevant to him. Methods or approaches. All he wanted was to mimic her movement. He beheld the way she brought music to life with her hands, her gestures, and her technique. Even if others were still having trouble, André had mastered the subtleties of music's emotional impact within a matter of weeks. He was concerned about that. Intuition, not strictness. His already strained connection with his dad became even more so as he matured. The solemn, stiff classical pieces weren't anything André was keen about performing. He aimed to inject life and joy into music. That was considered insulting by his dad. His father snapped back, "I didn't raise you to play waltzes," in response to André's request to perform the waltz. That was a devastating blow. When André brought Marjorie, his future wife, to his family, things took a turn for the worst. Rather than welcoming Marjorie with open arms, André's mother instructed him to go back to his neat room and treated him like a child. The final straw was that he abducted Marjorie and departed, forever ignoring the past. After that, even though he played in major arenas all around the globe, his parents never turned up to see him perform. His father passed away in 1992, therefore he was never able to witness André's success. But in the midst of all that setback, André was busy formulating a strategy. As a member of his dad's orchestra, he became aware of something peculiar. It seemed like most of the musicians weren't into the song. The topic of conversation shifted to the weather. Their main gripe was the salary. It seemed dead. Something miraculous occurred, though, during the encore. A Strauss waltz would be played by the orchestra. All of a sudden, the crowd went wild. Everyone grinned. As a group, they hummed softly. We felt a shift in energy. When André heard it, he realized he had found his musical calling. Not to win over critics, but to inspire audiences. A dying woman once heard him play a gentle serenade. Who, for days, had been asleep. She did, however, open them as the room swelled with music. André had a revelation about the power of music at that same time. Being flawless wasn't important, what mattered was how you felt. At that point, the seed of an idea to found his own orchestra began to germinate. André began modestly in 1978, when he was 29 years old, caring for his newborn baby at home with few funds. He assembled a small ensemble known as the Maastricht Salon Orchestra. They would play in every available space. Civil ceremonies, community centers, and border towns between Belgium and Germany. Most people had forgotten about the old-fashioned salon music and waltzes that they played. It lacked glitz. Although they were not making a lot of money, André was unconcerned. He was engaged in his passion. On one occasion, he performed Franz Lehasse's Gold and Silver Waltz at a little concert. After giving it his all, he sensed a change. His ears seemed to pick up on the music's message. He resolved that night that this was his life's work. It didn't bother him if people thought it was corny. What mattered to him was that the elite laughed. He was determined to spread the message that classical music could be upbeat and joyous until others agreed. André Rieu reached a crossroads in his life in 1987. He had nearly reached the age of 40. During which time he presided over the Maastricht Salon Orchestra. Although I sensed an oddity. The thrill has faded. There were obvious boundaries. Also, the previous style wasn't cutting it anymore. He yearned for a superior experience. He had more in mind than only playing music. His goal was to conjure enchantment. The thrill and awe that an audience would have felt if Johann Strauss had physically moved his body to the music while he played the violin and conducted. Feeling energized, having fun, and full of life. Despite Rieu's desire to restore it, he found the decision challenging. Launching a brand new venture required a tremendous leap of faith. He lacked the financial means to employ professional musicians. There was an increase in his own financial burden with each musician he hired. It was hard to tell who would be booked, and classical music wasn't exactly renowned for its daring. Still, he felt compelled to give it a go. His brand new orchestra, the Johann Strauss Orchestra, debuted on January 1, 1988. Even though there were only 12 musicians and a tiny audience, the vibe was electric. Rieu disregarded the regulations. The orchestra was not dressed in their customary black by him. The stage was no longer kept silent and solemn by him. Playful folk music, dramatic lighting, and an air of theatrical flair were all elements he included. The reviewers were unimpressed. They said it was tacky and inexpensive. The crowd, on the other hand, cheered, grinned, and participated. Rieu was determined not to let go of the spark he had discovered. The turning point arrived at that particular second. The Champions League final took place in Vienna in May 1995. Something out of the ordinary occurred during halftime of the match between Ajax and Bayern Munich. Rieu and his orchestra took the field to play the second waltz by Shostakovich. Dutch viewers had heard the song in an ad, but nobody was prepared for what happened next. 50,000 football fans in the stadium began bopping, humming, and otherwise engrossed in the music. Nothing like it had ever been seen before. 300 million viewers in Europe were able to see the live broadcast. The cultural upheaval it caused was more than simply a halftime entertainment. After then, 200,000 CDs were sold by Rieu. The previous year's album Strauss & Company experienced an unexpected explosion in popularity. It became the best-selling album in the Netherlands for the entire decade after spending 19 weeks at the top of the charts. Even those who had no interest in classical music were captivated by his waltzes and began to buy his recordings and attend his concerts. Many in the music industry consider that football match to be the turning point in André Rieu's career as a musician. Although he became a sensation, not everyone was overjoyed. The realm of classical music retaliated forcefully. His detractors accused him of being dishonest, claiming that he was eradicating centuries-old music and transforming it into a show. A renowned conductor was even criticized for what was described as musical pornography in an extremely harsh critique. The critics were not fond by the elaborate costumes, theatrical gags, oversimplified staging, or enormous sets. In 2008, things reached a boiling point when Rieu constructed a copy of the Schönbrunn Palace in Vienna. Everything from fountains and ice rinks to horses, and all for show purposes only. Purists were outraged by the price tag of $34 million. Nevertheless, Rieu remained steadfast. Everyone, not just seasoned musicians in arenas, should be able to enjoy music, in his opinion. The freedom to appreciate music that was once restricted by rigid customs should be extended to all members of society, including children, parents, teachers, and housekeepers. The reality was also difficult to deny. He had a legion of devoted followers. They went wild at his concerts, dancing in the aisles and buying albums by the caseload. Strauss and colleagues had been making noise since 1994, but their 1995 performance sent them soaring. It sold 150,000 copies in the Netherlands in a matter of months. It did something unprecedented for classical music in Germany: it cracked the top 5. By the time it reached its height, sales had surpassed 3 million copies globally. Its sales in key European areas were higher than those of several well-known pop artists, including Bon Jovi and Celine Dion. As a result of his influence, even major record stores began to prioritize classical music. It was referred to as the Rieu effect by those in the know. He reportedly earned more from his CDs than any other classical musician, according to Universal Music. He was reshaping the industry as a whole, not merely creating music. It all started with that daring move he made in 1987, when he named his band after Johann Strauss, a move that many interpreted as an act of arrogance. In the end, though, he proved them incorrect. Unlike Strauss, he was not replaced. After he revived him, he continued. As the 1980s rolled around, Strauss waltzes began to age. Very few people were actually playing them. Rieu was largely responsible for the 16-fold growth in Strauss's performance volume by 2010. From its humble beginnings with only 12 members, his orchestra had expanded to encompass almost 60. Greater even than the orchestra conducted by Strauss. On the 100th anniversary of Strauss's passing in 1999, Rieu released a tribute album in which he expressed his profound respect for the composer. His efforts to preserve Austria's musical legacy were recognized even by the Austrian government, which bestowed upon him one of their highest national honors. Classical music was never the same once André Rieu made it a worldwide sensation. No one anticipated his 2008 performance as a violinist. He toured the world with a gigantic model of the Schönbrunn Palace in Vienna. This is a full-scale castle that accompanied him on his global travels. There was more to it than that. It even had authentic Vienna-style horse-drawn carriages, chandeliers, ice rinks, and fountains. The Rolling Stones had never constructed something on such a grand scale before. It wasn't for nothing, either. Rieu aspired to convey the enchantment of Vienna to the masses. Those who would never be able to afford to visit such place. It was a logistical nightmare. It took 100 men 6 days to construct the stage every time he set it up, but it was worth it. Stadiums in Europe and Australia were filled to capacity with spectators. He performed to an unprecedented 38,605 spectators at Melbourne's Telstra Dome, making it the largest classical concert in Australia's history. Back in Europe, arenas were selling out at the same rate as his 3 performances in that city, which drew about 90,000 people. His DVDs had 8 of the top 10 slots in the Australian charts for a while. Sneaking in were only Pink and AC/DC. That wasn't just luck on the side. With performances that drew in millions of fans, Rieu joined the ranks of the world's highest-grossing tours alongside Madonna and the Police, putting him in the top 10. Very remarkable for someone whose name is associated with the waltz as its king. Not only that, but no other classical artist has ever amassed more than 500 platinum medals, all thanks to the sales of his albums and DVDs. Universal Music sent him a personalized chrome violin trophy as a token of their appreciation, noting that his success was unparalleled in the music industry. But there were some hiccups. Tragically, in 2016, a joyful Christmas tour in the UK was cut short. As the Rieu Ensemble traveled to Leeds, long-standing trombonist Ruud Merckx had a heart collapse while sleeping. For over 20 years, he was a member of Rieu's ensemble. His spouse, who was also an orchestra member, was by his side. At home, they had 2 kids who were eager to play. The event had a profound effect on the team. Rieu wasted no time in taking action, postponing the rest of the UK tour and cancelling that night's gig in Nottingham. Those shows in Glasgow, Manchester, London, and Birmingham were removed from the schedule. His orchestra was like family to Rieu. When he said that, he meant it. It was devastating to lose one of his members just before Christmas, especially because many had been with him for more than 25 years. It was 5 days after his return to the Netherlands that Merckx passed suddenly. A change was noticeable when Rieu finally got back to the UK in March. The magic was still there, but fewer people were watching. The events of December were remembered by everyone, even him. The music of André Rieu had captivated audiences around the globe for decades. However, he was almost overcome upon his return to Mexico City in March of 2024. He kept on touring the world at 74 years old, sounding as energetic as someone half his age, until his health suddenly failed him. André passed out after just 2 performances because to the terrible mix of jet lag, the high altitude, and a bad case of the illness. Mexico City's high elevation, more than 2,000 meters above sea level, tested his mettle. Members of his orchestra also endured hardship, with some even reporting weariness and nosebleeds. The situation was more difficult for André. In his own words, he felt as old as 100 and was lightheaded and overheated. His first words to his wife that night when backstage were, "I don't want a first concert day like this anymore." It was a statement he had never made before. The seemingly unstoppable performer finally admitted he might need a break. There will be no concerts. He had always taken great satisfaction in never missing a performance, but now he had to go home, disappointing 40,000 admirers. "I thought this was more than just an annoyance. André has been sick for a long time. He had to take months off touring in 2010 after losing his balance due to a viral infection in his inner ear. In 2019, he even went on stage while secretly dealing with a severe fever. Maybe, but probably not again." Managing a company was no longer Pierre's only role. His father's safety was now in his hands. He had gradually relieved André of some of his responsibilities over the years by taking care of the staff, logistics, and general smooth operation. André used to be highly possessive of having last say over everything. At this point, he had full faith in Pierre. With each near-death experience and health worry, their friendship deepened, and Pierre took on the role of protector behind the scenes. The penalty followed. The Dutch government levied a hefty fine on André. £236,000, on the grounds that the children had worked beyond the minimum age for employment. It was one of the biggest cultural fines the Dutch have paid, even after reductions. André's squad rallied. They stated that the kids didn't put on a show after 11 o'clock. During the curtain call, they re-entered the stage and waved. Not André, but Zamfir was theoretically in charge of those children. After 2 years of legal disputes, the court finally sided with him. After the fire that destroyed Notre Dame Cathedral, he suddenly donated 700 tons of steel to help rebuild it. Subdued movements that exposed a side of him that was not often the center of attention. His priceless Stradivarius violin is another example. He was on the verge of selling it due to his financial problems. He put it up for sale at an astronomical price simply to ensure its security. And he removed it from sale as conditions improved. To him, the violin is more than just a musical instrument. He currently plays a rare 1732 model and securely transfers it around. His wife Marjorie was the unsung hero, quietly penning orchestral music for which she never received credit. She prefers to keep out of the limelight and focus on her singing. André stole the show, and Marjorie played the supporting role, molding the sound, directing the vision, and inspiring him to compose fresh works when his interest waned in classical music. Additionally, she was the driving force behind the couple's most daring decision, the purchase of a castle that was hundreds of years old. The phone call appeared out of thin air. During their vacation, it transpired. Within, the reverberations of musical performances and the murmurs of decisions made by the family that molded the empire can still be discerned. The current generation is making their way into that realm now. The 9-year-old granddaughter of André, Daisy, is already practicing piano with the orchestra. This isn't an advertising ploy. Little by little, with the help of love and talent, the Rieu legacy grows. Coming up in the music industry is something André understands. Just as her father, Pierre, experienced it firsthand, so too is Daisy. Everyone was welcome here, so feel free to sing, clap, or cry if they so desired. As the 2010s came to a close, he began to advise his audiences against wearing ball dresses unless they intended to dance in them. People adored him because he made the symphony into an exciting celebration. Rather than live performances, most classical concerts used to feel more like lectures. Dress formally, keep to yourself, and follow the rules so closely that the slightest misstep could result in a severe frown. That Rieu despised. Rieu had already gone viral when naysayers claimed his show was too informal. His Dublin version of Danny Boy went viral, attracting millions of views like a music video that tops the charts. He was brilliant not only because he went online, but also because of how he put it to use. There was music, themes, and content created for each stop on the tour that was unique to that region. He included his audience in the performance rather than just inviting them. Everything was carefully orchestrated, from polls to sneak peeks, parties to rewards. The focus shifted from the music itself to the audience's ability to experience his vision, their emotions, and the memories it evoked. Theaters showing motion pictures also had to adapt. Silence and stiff attitudes were things of the past. With the addition of refreshments and beverages, moviegoers could relax and enjoy an evening that felt more like a party than just a showing of a film. Rieu understood a basic reality. He fulfilled people's desires for genuine experiences. At first, the critiques were quite harsh. But André Rieu's past is much more complicated. Not as much as the praise implies. A man who spent years in therapy trying to overcome the wounds caused by an emotionally aloof father lies beneath the stage presence and sold-out venues. Even though he was good on the violin, his father never took pride in him or even noticed him. André opted not to attend his father's funeral due to the depth of his pain. When he was younger, he saw his sibling flee to a different nation to get away from the same kind of emotional problems. André gained valuable tools and a fresh viewpoint through therapy. He has moved on from daydreaming to investing in actual projects. Even while his stage demeanor remains captivating, that incident changed him and taught him to be cautious. Something monumental is about to happen to André as he approaches his 75th birthday. Maybe a final, magnificent goodbye. His planned concert series in Maastricht, the city of his birth, will be more of a farewell than a celebration, but he still plans to go. Show cancellations and concerns about his ability to continue have already been troubling indications from his health. He keeps his mind sharp by traveling with a personal trainer and by being very careful with his sleep. He thinks music can cure a lot of things. Everyone from casual listeners to doctors and nurses have told him that his concerts have a healing effect. Maybe it's because of it that he keeps going. Every note André Rieu plays is a method for him to give back, for him to maintain his youth, and for him to overcome the trauma of his childhood.